Hey everybody, welcome to the video, welcome to the channel. You can see the cab to our Ford Super Duty sitting there ready to take off into space behind us. And today we hope to do a little bit of work on the engine and get the engine ready to set into the frame so we can keep this project moving. On the previous video we got all this framework done. Look at her, painted it up pretty, looking good. And we got the bottom side of this cab all seam sealed, primed, cleaned up, painted and ready to go. This thing started with 2 scrap trucks. It's going to take one more third parts truck, which I should be picking up here in a few days. And we're hoping to make one decent going to town rig dump truck out of these old F Super Duties. Why? Because I need a dump truck. And I decided to go the built, not bought route. That way I can learn something in the process and I know exactly what I have whenever it's all finished. Let's get started. So this is the gas 460 engine we're going to put in this thing. I drove all the way up to Gary, Indiana to pick this thing up. I had a subscriber who said, hey, I got a truck you can have for free. It's got a lot of rust damage, but it's got a good engine in it and it's got a good hoist. And I said, sure. I got some videos of getting this thing out of the truck. If you scroll through the dump truck build playlist, you can find those videos and watch it for yourself to see how we got to this point. It does run. We had it running before we took it out, but we got a little bit of work to do before we put it back in. I got new motor mounts. Exhaust manifolds are going to come off. And I got a new starter to put on. This one actually worked, but you can see the cover's really corroded and falling apart. And what better time to replace a starter than when it's out of the truck? We also got to get this PTO shaft off here. It was all seized up and we couldn't get it off when it was in the truck. So I want to get it off there so we can get it cleaned up and make sure everything's working well on it. This truck had a 7.3 in it. The cabs and frames are all the same on the 7.3s and the 460s. The only difference is the engine mounts themselves. So we got the old engine mounts out of that. Well, that white truck doesn't exist anymore, but we got the old engine mounts out, cleaned up and painted, so we need to get those mounted up as well. And I'd really love to get this thing spruced up, cleaned up, and rattle can a little Ford blue engine enamel on it as well. Step one, we're just going to take a grinder and cut this piece of pipe off. I'd like to get this thing sitting flat. We're kind of not in a great spot in life right now. That pipe is what's preventing us from being in a super happy spot. Certainly in a precarious manner. Yeah. Who would have thought it was heavy? Here's a really fun, sketchy idea. Well, it's definitely more stable. I would highly recommend an engine stand or anything smarter than this situation because it's heavy. Heavier than I could get off me. But here we are. Here's what we look like. You know, just out of optimism, I'll spray some fluid on. We'll hit them with the impact and see what happens. Stud and everything. You know what? I'm fine with that. That's what we call a pleasant surprise. Socket doesn't quite fit on this one. We'll have to give her a little encouragement there. There we go. It's definitely a lot easier doing this out in the open. See if we can get these studs out the rest of the way. I'm just going to try to double nut them. I'd picked up a whole new bottle of oxygen. I thoroughly expected more of a fight from that. Like I said, it did function, but I think it'd be a good time to replace it. This is the main one I need to replace. That's that stud that broke off when we were moving it, and they're just old. They're dry rot, sure. We'll put some new ones on. Apparently we didn't have the camera on, but the old flexible breaker bar, one of my favorites, didn't treat me too well on that one. Oops. There's our broken bolt right there. I'm pretty sure I see the problem right off the get. I could be wrong. But if we rotate that around, it almost looks like that feller was cross-threaded from the get-go. Hip. Oh, I love that sound. I'm at a crossroads with this project, and I'm pretty sure I made my decision on what road to take on the previous video with the amount of effort that we put into the frame and the bottom side of that cab. And I think it's the right decision. I just remember when we were doing the Ford 555, everything we did, like, well, let's just replace what's bad now, and then we'd get it back together, it'd run for 5 minutes, and something would fail. And it was months of that before we could actually get good use out of it. And I feel like I'm just going to be time ahead to go ahead and strip this down. Let's take the alternator off, we'll take it in, that way I can get it tested. The belt is dry rot and cracked anyway. We'll go ahead and pull the water pump and get a new water pump. That failed on the 555 right off the bat. We'll just strip all this stuff down. That way whenever we put this thing together, I'm sure we'll still have some problems whenever we get it all put back together. But that way when it is put back together and we fire it up and we go out and we start using it, hopefully it's not as many problems as we had with the backhoe, and right off the get-go, or at least pretty daggone close to it, we've got a good, reliable truck. Reliable is key here. And I know I'm putting more effort into this than a lot of people expected. I think a lot of people expected me to pop rivet a road sign down to the floors, call it good and be done with it because, well, we've kind of done the whole run what you brung spirit of the channel for quite some time. But I did bring both of these trucks home, and I brought all the parts home, and I brought all the paint home, and I'm bringing the motivation. So we're still running what I brought. I'm just bringing a little bit more this time. And I'm pretty glad I made that decision because that would have really sucked to do inside the truck. Especially with this broken bolt down here we still got to get out. That's neat. I do believe the water pump so this ran out to heater box, if I remember correctly. This end, there's another piece on here, broke off. It was so corroded, and you can see how bad this end right here looks. So I'd say we go ahead and take that off so we can get it replaced as well. Just going to break the pipe since we're replacing it. That's fine. The old gator roll, come on. Gator roll. Yeah. Now maybe roll. There we go. There we go. Oh, all right. Fuel line. Somebody at some point came through and did something to this rig because some of the bolts have been upgraded. And there is RTV around the oil pan. Now, oil pan looks a little newer. So I found a nut the same size, and that bolt sticks out the backside. I cleaned it up just a little bit on top. If I needed to, if it's still on the engine, I could try to weld it to that, but there's some playing that makes it a little bit trickier. It's not too bad, but this way I can actually thread it on to get it started a little bit, in theory, and then fill that whole thing with weld, use the impact, and should be able to zip her out. A few people have been asking how I like the new shop setup I got going on. I have been absolutely loving it. A few people suggested a lean-to on this side. Maybe one day. I'm not that worried about it. Let's see here. Nope. Didn't think so. Yeah, I didn't think so. Oh, that's plastic. Fella really needs to finish his metal welding table inside. You know, that's a project I should finish. Look at that. That didn't bode well. Well, we got some movement. My gosh. There's a couple options. One would just be torch that whole nut off, put a new nut on and weld it on there. The other would be try to torch that bolt out. Never done anything like that. I think I'd try it. Then worst case scenario, I just torch the whole nut off. It's like a heat it up and let it drip out kind of technique. In a remarkable turn of events, all the wrong tools appear to be working. So we got that going for us. There. All right, so we got the torch through, and then I drilled it out to clean it out to the proper size. You can see that's what's left of the bolt and the threads, and I was just trying to get the last little bit of that bolt peeled off of there. And then what we'll try to do is run a tap through. I drilled too big. We were really close to doing something. Just didn't work out. My hole's off center. Well, it was a good try. Ah, neat. You can see the threads look okay there, all the way around. It's that top side. When I drilled, my hole was off center. So I got into the threads on the top. That's okay. Now, 95% of the people that are watching this video or this build series understand completely what we're doing and why we're doing it. They've either done it, or they've had a buddy that's done it, or they've just been in that position. And I'm not really addressing the 5% that are making these comments. I'm more so addressing the comments for the people that have these concerns when it comes to taking on this type of project. Point number one I want to talk about is every now and then I'll get a comment like, you sure are putting a lot of work into a junk vehicle. Well, you're not wrong. They're definitely junk vehicles. I mean, we're not denying that. One of them was scrap that was given away for free, and the other I just bought with hardly any parts on it. It's going to take a third truck to make all this happen. But I tell you what, but if I get to the end of this project and the vehicle is still junk, well, then I've really done something wrong. This should be a really nice running rig when we get to the end of it. And yeah, it is a tremendous amount of work. There is absolutely no denying that. But that is what I signed up for. I want a good, reliable rig that's going to work well for it. And I think what a lot of people have heard when I say that is that I want a rig that I don't put any money into, I just want to run and work. But that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm 100% fine with putting money into it as long as where I'm putting that money increases the reliability and the serviceability, meaning doing little things here and there that'll make this truck easier to service, so when the inevitable breakdowns happen, I'll be able to do it in a more efficient, more effective manner. Things like stainless steel bolts, getting things painted so we don't have as many rust issues in the long run, and just putting that money where it counts. The other comment I keep getting, which is something that could possibly scare somebody away from doing this project, is the amount of time that it takes. It does take a tremendous amount of time, but I'm at a point in my life where I've got more time than I have money. So I've got the time to do this. Now I could sit around and dream and wish of the truck that I'd like to have one day, or I could spend a little bit of money that I do have and the lot of time that I have into making something exactly what I want. So that's what I'm doing. If you're at a stage in life where you've got the money, but not the time, go buy one. You're still gonna have to work on it. You're still gonna have to fix things. There's still gonna be problems, but probably less problems, and probably less time spent making those minor repairs versus building a whole truck from scrap. But if you're like me and you're at that more time than money phase, don't be afraid to spend the time, because what else are you gonna be doing with it? Sitting around dreaming, wishing you had the truck? Could have been building it the whole time. And I do want to point out that these comments don't offend me. They don't bother me in the sense that somebody's calling me wrong. I'm not worried about that. It does bother me that some of these mindsets are out there, though. It's mind-baffling to me. But somebody made the comment, why spend time learning these skill sets that you're never going to use? One, I'm using the skill set right now. And one of the favorite things that I've heard somebody say, and I wish I could remember where it was from, and I'm going to be paraphrasing, but being completely useless is a luxury of the rich. So to sum it up, if you want a project like this, it's going to take time, it's going to take effort, but if it's what you want, it's going to be worth it. And in the end, not only will you have exactly what you want, not kind of what you want, not a little bit of what you want, but exactly what you want, you'll have at least a basic understanding of every skill set it took to do that. Now, if you do have problems in the future, you'll be that much more quicker at fixing it. And this is your reminder, if you do take on a project like this, remember, if you get hurt doing it, it's not because I motivated you, okay? That's on you, buddy. I hope you do it. Just be safe and be responsible. And I don't know, what other disclaimers and things like that? So while we're waiting on that primer to dry, what I want to go ahead and do is get our engine mounts hooked up. The engine mounts for the 460 and the 7.3 are different. I pulled these off of the F350 frame that had the 460 in it. We got them all cleaned up and painted up, and I got brand new grade 8 bolts to put in them. Might as well go ahead and get those on. Now on this one, it appears that we're going to reuse these bolts that are on here. Now we got to add a couple more. There's a couple more holes, and of course the ones on top. The only catch is those bolts are bigger than the holes that are in the bracket. So we're going to have to drill these two holes out just a little bit. Perfect opportunity to test out this setup. And then we just go to the drill bit box and we do a little shopping. If I find out who painted these threads, that. Now hold on. Probably need to take these washers off. Like that. So it says wait 10 to 15 minutes between coats, apply 2 light coats, and then 1 wet coat. Not 100% sure what that means, but that's what we're going to do. I think after getting those engine mounts on, we should be ready for the second coat. Not worried about the overspray on the valve covers, because once the blue goes on, the valve covers are coming off. This side had quite a bit of oil residue. It took quite a bit to get everything cleaned up on this side, which means that valve cover gasket's probably leaking. Pretty easy time to get those gaskets changed out. So once we get changed out. So once we get the blue on here, we can pop these valve covers off, get the gaskets changed out, and then paint the valve covers. We're also going to do the intake up here, but I'm going to paint it gray. And since we're replacing the spark plugs, we're just painting over those too. While that second coat's drying, I want to experiment with something here. I think on this one I could make a homemade puller. Pull that body mount out, separate the two of them. On this one I don't have the room down below because where that cross member's at. Thinking about threading some of this all thread in there, cutting it off, and then just beating it, you know? This is foolproof, really. Well, I got another idea, but we gotta get another coat of primer on. This is supposed to be the wet coat, whatever that means. More runs equal more horsepower. That's what I like to say. So we'll let that dry just a little bit, and then it says we're supposed to start spraying our enamel, the blue, within an hour. And we got to kind of keep the process moving, I suppose. So my other idea is maybe I can just drill that bushing out. Is that good or bad? I don't know. Oh, it's good. Here we go. Oh yeah. Well, that's kind of why I was wanting to replace them. There's not a lot going on anymore there. Using the same duplicolor engine enamel with ceramic blue. I would love to open the garage door, get some more light in here, a little bit more air, although that fan is doing a really good job. But since the door is over the engine, if we open it, everything's gonna fall out all over the place. There we go, very nice. A few test hits. Oh, what are your instructions? Same thing. 2 light coats, followed by 1 medium wet coat. Okay, all right. Get in here with me. Get you a good gander. All right, I want to get these cleaned up and some touch-up paint on them. That way they got some time to set up before we get the new body mounts installed. Wasn't a whole lot left of these. They just pulled out of the body. So the spots where the cab mounts or body mounts were, all cleaned up, touched up, looking good. A few people did comment that the frame was junk because the frame is bent. I think what they're seeing is the bend that's supposed to be there. I think they're seeing this part and the part up there. And just the angle of how the camera's set up probably makes it look like the whole thing's bent, but it's not. She looks real good. And I'm just tickled with this. I didn't find any major issues. Everything looks good. I was going to replace the freeze plugs, but honestly, those look fine. There's no rust, corrosion, or anything on there, so I didn't see any sense in messing with them. Our next video, we'll finish getting that intake all cleaned up so we can get it painted. Then we'll get the valve covers off so we can get those painted. Take a peek underneath, make sure there's nothing too crazy going on underneath there. Get some more parts ordered. Some more parts came in today. I already got sitting on the shelf over there. And by the end of this week, I should have the third truck to kind of finish this whole thing all together. Everybody keeps saying put the rear end underneath. I don't have a rear end. That'll come out of the third truck. So hopefully I can get that rounded up this week. But we're making good progress, and we're going to get to the real exciting part where we get to start putting the engine in, and then we get the cab put on. We got some awesome stuff coming, and this is really, remember, the goal is mid-March for this thing. We're going to be pushing hard to hit that deadline. It's really going to come down to how this thing treats me right there. That's going to be the deciding factor of whether or not we hit that mid-March deadline. It's a lot of pieces. Won't be long, and there'll be one whole thing. Hopefully for a while. Oof. I hope we don't wreck this thing right off the bat. Can't thank you guys enough for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.